Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets, a family podcast of pirates and penguins. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
So it's been a quiet week.
It's been a quiet, hunkered down.
This is end of January.
Yeah.
We're past Christmas, where it's not yet Lent. We can't go anywhere. In other years, we might go to the museum or something.
Right. This is usually the time. In fact, in my Facebook memories, I came up with like several different trips to the museum in the last week or two.
Right.
Because this is the time when I'm like, okay, we need to get out of the house. Let's go to the MFA. Unfortunately, the MFA is closed right now, so that's not an option.
Right. Thankfully, opening up again February 5th. So as of February 1st, the governor changed the orders, and so now museums can reopen. But even then, it's still...
Just logistically, like...
You got to get tickets ahead of time.
You have to get tickets ahead of time, so you can't just, like, spur of the moment. And then the cafeteria is not open, so I'm not... Like, we would have to pack a lunch and go eat in the car.
In this weather.
I don't know.
So,
I'm just...
And it's so cold. Like, today was, when we got up, it was like 2. It's just, it's so, we're just stuck indoors with nothing to do, and there's nothing, so, hey, you can listen to us talk about that. Now, we get some stuff we can talk about, but, I mean, speaking of stuck indoors, so on Saturday, there was at least a scout hike, an outing for the older kids. So
it was cold on Saturday, too.
It wasn't 2, but it was 7 when I got up. It warmed up, like, by the time we got out there, it was about 15 degrees, but...
That's cold.
Yeah. So, it was Bella and Sophie's troop and Ben's troop were going together. And I was just going to drop them off and let them go with the troop. And then Sophie didn't feel well. So I couldn't leave Bella. They were partners. They were paired up as hiking buddies, trail buddies. And I couldn't just leave Bella hanging. So I went. Which is just fine. We went to the local town forest, which we know pretty well, and Adam, the assistant scoutmaster, was leading. He used to be the chair of the town forest committee. He knows the forest really well. He took us by some old ruins of a mill by a pond, like some 19th century mill ruins, which is kind of cool.
That's cool. We've been to the town forest lots of times, and I've never seen those. So
yeah. Next time we go out there, probably in the spring, because that'll be unburied and we can find them. I'll take you guys by it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And then he showed us like deer tracks and other like animal tracks, and so it was fun. And then we stopped and made lunch. So all the trail buddies had been said to prepare a hot lunch for themselves. So you had to cook a meal. So I'd purchased a Twig Stove, which is like a little collapsible metal cage that you burn like small sticks in to make a fire, and you cook above it. So I'd picked one of those up, and so we brought cans of soup, the what's the kind you don't need a can, the flip top, you don't need a can opener, and we heated those up, and Bella was like, this was the best lunch, hot soup after a cold walk. I'm like, yep, I know what I'm doing.
I think Ben brought a hot dog.
He did hot dogs with his hiking buddy, so they made hot dogs and mac and cheese, although I don't think Ben had any of them. It was like ready mac, so it's just heat and serve.
Ben is a little bit of a mac and cheese connoisseur.
Yeah. I mean, he likes Kraft, but it's got to be the regular Kraft. So it was good. It was fun, and I think a lot of the kids had fun. It was cold, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't windy. If it had been windy, that would have been a problem.
Yeah, that's when it really feels horrible, is when it's super windy.
Yeah. So it was great to get out there. It felt just to get outdoors and do something. I'm just getting so cooped up. I want to get outside even on a cold day.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad that I couldn't go, but I was afraid it would be too much, and the other kids were not.
Anthony and Lucy were too young to go. They wouldn't have been allowed to go because it's below a certain temp. Cubs aren't allowed to do the thing. Remember what was the thing we did last year? It was the same situation. It was bitterly cold, and you had to, there was only the kids above a certain age could do it. Right. Like the Weebelos couldn't go.
Like you must be this tall to ride this ride.
Yes, you must be this tall to to endure the bitter cold. But it was good.
Which makes sense because like Lucy is such a tiny little thing. I don't think she's got the body fat to withstand that kind of temperature.
Right, and then kids get cold, they fall in the snow, they get wet, they get cold, and they cry, and they want to go home, and all that sort of stuff. Not that these kids are all that much older. Frankly, some of them, and frankly, some of the parents, like one of the girls' moms came, and she was like, she didn't have a hat, she had like dungarees on and sneakers. It's like, where are you going? They had her, so the scoutmaster and one of the other adults, they had set up a fire at the place where we were going to have lunch, so they had her go with them and wait there because it could have been a trouble.
That reminds me of when my youngest brother spent a year in Canada doing yoga at an ashram. Anyway,
hi Steve.
he spent he told me this story, like it's right, was outside of Montreal.
Texas boy in Montreal.
So he had, some winter gear, but not like
not Montreal
gear, Montreal winter gear. And so like they were taking the bus or the van into town, and he did not have a hat or scarf or gloves or like he was just not dressed, and he was
not prepared.
And they're like, and he's like, what? We're gonna be in the van, so like, and they're like, what if the van breaks down? You are not dressed for the kind of weather that we're having. You are not allowed to go. Like they would not let him go on the outing until he was properly dressed because he just doesn't understand. Like when it's that cold out, you have to have the right equipment.
It doesn't.
It's life or death.
People who grow up in that kind of weather, they know that it doesn't take long before it gets bad. You've got to be prepared. Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of a funny story. Like I can understand where he's coming from too, because like you just don't have that kind of experience.
Right. Well, I mean, it'd be like, as a northerner going to the desert Southwest in the summer.
Right, without enough water and sunscreen and sun
all
protection.
The stuff that you need to go for a hike, somewhere. Yes, it's the same thing.
Right, you do not go on a hike in the Southwest in the summertime without adequate
super
water.
Precautions, like a lot of water, right? So yeah. I played golf on it in August in Phoenix. During the day, that's
crazy.
Yeah, I was hallucinating pink bunnies on the 7th green. Not quite, but man, I was like, this is not good. I need to go.
No, that's
so that was a scout hike. But earlier this week we had really good news, right? With Lucy, you took Lucy for her wheat challenge.
Yes,
we've been talking about these. Her various food allergies that she's had, and that we've been hoping she would grow out of, and we've already gotten past the dairy allergy. She's fine on that. What was the other one?
Egg
allergy. Yes, egg allergy. She's fine with eggs
and pecans.
And we've made it to, because of all her allergies, we've made it to the wheat allergy, and so the allergist has her come in. Have her eat the whatever the allergen is.
First they have to do the skin prick test.
They do a skin prick test, see whether that if she has a reaction to it in the skin prick test. If she doesn't, then she can start wait.
Yeah, so they start off. So they start off with a 1/4 teaspoon, and then a 1/2 teaspoon, and then a 3/4, and then a whole teaspoon.
It takes several hours because they're waiting in between.
Right, with 15-minute wait in between each dose. And then and at each time before they give her another one, they do the vital signs, check her skin, make sure she's not breaking out in hives, that sort of thing. So it's all very controlled.
Right.
But they won't even do it at all if you have too big a reaction to the skin prick test. A friend actually asked me this week, like, well, why don't they just do the blood test? That's what they gave me when I was diagnosed with my allergy. But I'm like, yeah, the blood test is actually really great for determining if you have an allergy. But
it's not great at determining if you don't have it.
Right. Because really the
only way to tell is for you to...
The food challenge is the gold standard because you are actually ingesting it. They're not just estimating based on your skin reaction or...
What's in your blood.
You're actually...
They're like,
consuming...
Are you having an encephalic reaction?
Right. You're actually consuming a significant amount of it. But in a controlled environment where the allergist is there, they've got the EpiPens and everything. And if you start to have a reaction, they'll treat you, under observation.
And when you think about it, it is kind of barbaric. It's like, so if the snake bites you and you start to swell up and die, we know that it's venomous. I mean, you know what I mean? It's kind of funny. It reminds me of Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, where McCoy has a reaction to the woman on dial. Or no, it wasn't the woman. It was the Chekhov's concussion. They wanted to release the pressure by drilling a hole in his head. Release the pressure of his concussion. It's barbaric, I tell you. Stone knives and bear skins. But so you took her for her, and they determined to do the wheat.
Yeah. She had zero reaction to the skin prick test on the wheat, and so we started her eating her on wheat thins. By the third dose, she was complaining of a bellyache. After the third one,
which possibly could mean a reaction.
Well, except the doctor, the doctor, looked at all her vital signs. He looked at the negative reaction on the skin prick, and he said, it's just as likely that she's getting a bellyache just because her body isn't used to digesting wheat, and she just doesn't have, it's just unused to it. So he had us go ahead and wait it out until her bellyache went away, which she consumed copious amounts of water, and eventually it stopped hurting, and then sent us home and told us to complete the food challenge at home that afternoon or the next day. He said after eating, by that point, she'd had a quarter teaspoon, a half teaspoon, and 3/4 of a teaspoon. So she'd basically had a teaspoon and a half of wheat.
Right.
Of wheat
so
thins.
It's nearly the entire...
Right. So she didn't feel like trying it again that afternoon, but the next day I got her to eat a little bit of bread.
Yes.
And some goldfish crackers.
The trick is once she's had a reaction to something, she doesn't want it. It's a chore to get her to try the thing that she reacted to.
Right. I mean, we could technically have probably skipped some of the food challenges, except that she's just really nervous.
Yeah.
And so in a way, we're kind of doing this just for her peace of mind, because would be fairly satisfied that she'd be okay with these.
Yeah.
Based on the skin tests. But so she was fine the next day, eating some goldfish crackers and some bread, and she didn't eat a whole lot of them, like maybe 2 or 3 goldfish crackers. And every day since then, she's had just a little bit of wheat, not a lot. She had some pasta one night, and she tried some bread. Tonight she had some bread pudding, and she liked it. She didn't eat a lot of it. I think she doesn't eat
a lot of things. I mean,
right.
There's something she'll shovel down, but most things she doesn't eat a lot of it. She'll eat a half an egg and that sort of stuff.
Right. So on the whole, pretty happy. The fact that she could try the bread pudding, which has wheat and eggs and dairy, and that she liked it.
Yeah.
Big win.
And didn't get a bellyache.
And no bellyache.
So the big deal with the wheat is this means that she can receive communion normally. Her first communion would be this year, and it means we don't have to make special arrangements for a special chalice with the precious blood, because I think we've mentioned before, even with the gluten-free hosts, they have wheat in them, and what she's allergic to is the wheat, not the gluten, and so she wouldn't be able to receive from the host. So we don't have to worry about that. And it's not even just for the first communion, but for her whole life. For her whole life, every mass she'd go to, she would have to make special arrangements ahead of time to receive only from the cup that did not have part of the host put in it, which is the normal procedure for
Yeah, my sister is gluten intolerant, and she only can receive occasionally because, like, when she comes to visit us, she receives from the chalice. If they have one of the chalice, like if they prepare two chalices, she can receive from the one that didn't have the crumbs put in it.
Right.
But she has to kind of watch and like track to see where it went.
Right. If you can't eat wheat, it becomes a huge hassle for receiving communion. So the fact that she can is a big burden off for both first communion, but also just the rest of her life. So the next big thing is the corn, and that's a big deal because corn, as I said before, is in everything. It's everywhere. Corn syrup, corn. Although an interesting thing, a food scientist that I encountered online, where I made a comment about this, said you actually don't really need to worry about corn syrup because it doesn't have any of the proteins in it. You know, he works in a factory where this stuff where corn is used, and he's like, no, there are no allergen products in corn syrup. So if it says it's corn syrup, you should be okay. So
in the past, she has had some like boiled sweets that were made with corn syrup and stuff, and she's been fine. I just sort of abundance of caution have been
right
more careful than we necessarily need to be.
So corn, it will be nice to get over that, but if she doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Then the other one is peanuts, and that's a lot of people have peanut allergies. So
right. A lot of people have it. I mean, it would be nice to know that she's fine with them because peanuts are one of those that can go from like 0 to 100 with anaphylaxis really quickly. Right. So knowing that she was safe eating peanuts would be a really...
It would take a burden off your mind.
Yeah, it would make me feel a lot better, especially for her, like going out and about in public.
But it's funny, like all week, you and I have been like, oh, she can eat regular pasta now. We don't have to buy the expensive rice pasta. Oh, she can eat this. Oh, like I think you and I have been way more excited than she has been.
Right. Because she doesn't really remember.
She doesn't remember having any of those things.
Life before allergies.
Yeah. But like the thing is, like whenever we would make soup, we'd have to make sure that any soup that is leftovers from bowls, like from the kids' bowls or whatever, we have to segregate it because they may have dipped bread in it, you know, or have it whenever we'd have pasta, we'd have to set aside, you know, special rice pasta just for her, and then if we didn't make enough, she'd go hungry. If we made too much, which usually we did, we'd put it in the fridge and it would sit there and she would never eat any more and we'd be throwing away. And rice pasta is expensive, which is why we don't just all eat rice pasta instead of wheat pasta. It's just all of these little things go away as the allergies go away, and it's just so it will be so awesome. So that was good news this week. The downside is these food challenges. Every time they go to the allergist, it costs us what is it? I think $150 every time.
Yeah, it's kind of for some reason the insurance isn't covering it.
Well, it's our deductible. We just it's the insurance we can afford. This is otherwise there's a deductible of I think $1,000 deductible, and so we're not close to it. And because it's going over the 2 years, the deductible starts again on January 1st.
Right. It would have been nice if we could have done them all last year or all this year.
And of course, given COVID, it's been a hassle to get any of that done. So
right. Oh, I know. They've right now they're only doing food challenges 2 days a week, and there's only 2 slots. Like there's 2 slots on Tuesday and 2 slots on Thursday. Because they can only have so many people in the office at a time, and a food challenge can be like 2 hours or more, so they have to like clear the room, you know, for use for that whole time.
Yeah, so
it's kind of boring, frankly, sitting there for 2 hours in the exam room
just waiting. Here, have a little food, wait.
Honestly, I think one of the reasons why she had the bellyache was probably she was just kind of hungry because she had like a granola bar for breakfast, and then all she had after that was like these little teeny tiny crumbs of wheat thin. I'm thinking that like the granola bar wasn't really enough to fill her up, and then little bits of wheat thin was just tantalizing her appetite.
So the other thing this week, which is also has to be medical related, is my mom's been in the hospital. So my mom, I think over the past year and a half, maybe 2 years, I think 2 years, she's been having onset of dementia, basically. I don't want to get into too much of it, but it is. She's 82. She's we have a history of it in our family, and her side of the family, obviously, and so it's been a challenge. She lives with my brother, and so she's been having these health challenges related to and around it. She's got other health issues too. Well, last week she fell coming out of the bathroom, and she hit her head pretty good. I saw the picture. She has these huge bruises around her eyes. She looks like a raccoon. And so the other day, I'm not clear on everything. I mean, it's hard to get the communicating, and most communications happening via text, so sometimes I'm not quite sure what they mean by what they're saying. But she apparently was having trouble reading. Like, her eyes suddenly got blurry, and apparently her doctor had said, if that happens, call an ambulance, because it maybe gets swelling or concussion. So they called an ambulance, and she went to the hospital. But because of COVID, no one could go in with her. And it's like, but she's not capable of making her own medical decisions. She doesn't remember things. She's forgetful. She remembers things wrong, like making things up in her mind or whatever. So that's been stressful for my brother, who's her caretaker. And
I feel like hospitals should apply the same sorts of rules they apply to minors to elders, which is
right.
A minor child would not be expected to go into the hospital without a parent or guardian. Why would we expect an elderly person to?
Right.
Really, like, anybody should have at least one accompanying person.
Right. I keep thinking back to when you had your miscarriage, and what that would have been like if you'd had to be there alone that whole time.
Right. I know that after a while, hospitals started allowing spouses or somebody to be with a woman in labor. But there was a time during the extreme lockdowns in New York where there were a few hospitals in the city that were not allowing women who were giving birth to have anybody in the room with them. Like, they wouldn't let anybody come into the hospital except the mom. And I thought, that's traumatic. Like, you're talking about inflicting like massive trauma on people.
Right.
At some point, like, how much more dangerous? I mean, how much more likely is it for the partner to be like?
Well, right. I mean, because the partner is already like, they're not going to get infected from the woman, and however dangerous it is for the woman and the baby, it's as dangerous for the man. It just doesn't make. I don't know. It's another vector, potential vector, et cetera, but
I feel like we've lost a little bit of the common sense and compassion that.
Right. Well, because there are other bad outcomes that can result. I mean, that there are other ways this can be bad for the mother and child.
Right.
Apart from COVID, by imposing further emotional stress and trauma.
Well, and also they've actually, I've seen some studies show that women who have somebody with them when they're in labor have better outcomes on average, because, like, if a woman goes into distress, a partner, whether it be a spouse or like a doula or someone, or mom or sister, is more likely to like notice and advocate a little bit more strongly, a little bit more quickly than nurses who are wandering in and out of the room.
Right.
So I think that there is evidence that there are much better outcomes when people have an advocate in the hospital with them than when they're alone.
So my mom is apparently doing fine. They did a bunch of tests, MRI and X-ray, and there was no swelling. And they got an optometrist that she's going to see on Monday, and they expect that she'll be released Monday. So by the time you hear this, she should be home. But yeah, and of course they're asking, does she have 24-hour care? Does she have well, yeah, my brother and his wife and their kids, and we tried to get a visiting nurse, and it's a whole drama. I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, this past year has made that whole situation so much more difficult for them than it even was before. It's like it is for everyone. So. If you remember her in your prayers, and my brother and his family in your prayers, we'd appreciate it. Just a brief prayer for them. So that's it for what's been going on. We were talking before, like, what are we going to talk about with food? And we really don't have much to talk about.
No,
we've been making same things. We haven't really done. Again, it's this time of year we just sort of you fall into a standard we're making the same things we make. We make chicken thighs, baked chicken thighs and curry. We had soup the other day. We just really haven't done anything unusual this week.
Or interesting.
Yes. We had shrimp tacos, which was good the other day. We've talked about them. That's the other thing is we made everything we've made this week. We've talked about before, so we don't want to retread that ground. But we had shrimp tacos, which were good. The sauce that you made for it was even better because we used the Mexican crema, the basically Mexican version of creme fraiche or sour cream that the supermarket carries now, which is awesome. I gotta tell you, the supermarket's carrying a lot more stuff than they used to do back in the day. It's awesome.
You're noticing it more since you're doing the shopping.
Well, now that I'm doing the shopping, yes. Well, hey, until I started doing the shopping in November after your surgery, I hadn't been in a supermarket since like last January. So 11 months. Just, it's weird to think about, but yeah.
That is weird.
Anyway, that's as much as we have to say about food this time. So let's talk about what we've been reading or watching, although I have an unusual watching. Not a TV show I've been watching. Your mom, Melanie's mom, bought us an Oculus Quest VR headset.
And I don't even know what that is.
Melanie has
I'm like, my mom was like, I want to buy you this thing. And I'm like, okay.
Talk to Dom.
If you want, I don't know what to do with that, but so, okay.
Melanie's mom is as much of a nerd as I am. In fact, she is on the Secrets of Technology podcast with me, and she works as a consultant helping people with technology.
Yeah,
so
my mom is a huge computer nerd.
She's a huge computer nerd, and so she's had one of these VR headsets for a bit, and she wanted to get it for us, and she was saying how it's good for like exercise and that sort of stuff. And so I was like, okay, sure, yeah. And apparently she does like VR bowling with your brothers and stuff. I'm like, okay. I haven't spent a lot of time with it yet, and I did figure out how to get it so that the kids I can put what I'm seeing on the TV so the kids can watch.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it is kind of fun. I was doing like mini golf with them, and like they were watching me do the mini golf. But there is a VR Star Wars game, which is kind of awesome.
Have you played it?
Not yet. I don't know. It's I want some. I haven't had time. I need like a block of time that I have available to play it. Not like 15 or 20 minutes or a half hour. Like I need like an hour or 45 minutes just to set aside to do it. So I'll maybe later tonight or tomorrow or this week or something, I'm going to give it a try. But I'm kind of looking forward to that. So it's kind of fun. It's super immersive. It's funky. It's not quite Ready Player One because you don't feel anything, obviously. But it is super immersive because it's all around you and the sound is 3D and yeah, kind of wild. There's one thing where you can watch movies in it, so you're in a virtual theater, and you can watch movies with other people, their avatars, and talk with them, like with family or friends. So you could watch a movie with your mom. So there's a big screen, and it's 3D, and it's like it looks like a movie theater. It's kind of wild. It's bizarre, but it's kind of cool. So that's one thing. The other thing I watched this week was I watched The Breakfast Club for the first time in ages. Probably, I would say in decades. I probably haven't watched The Breakfast Club since like the 90s on cable. I was doing an episode of Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, which we recorded but hasn't been released yet. And so I needed to watch the movie again. And wow, what a throwback. So this movie, in case you don't know The Breakfast Club, it's about it takes place in 1984 or 5, and it's a bunch of high school students who got detention and have to spend Saturday in detention at their school, and they come from all the different cliques: the jocks, the nerds, the stoners, the weird kid, and the princess, the rich girl. And they're all thrown together, and they, this sort of like this processing, this getting to know each other, and kind of exploring what it meant to be a teen and it's just one of those John Hughes films from the mid '80s. It was like he had like 4 or 5 movies from 1984 to 1986 that were huge. Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, Weird Science, Breakfast Club, and there's another one I'm forgetting, but Ferris Bueller. So it's this block, and he had other movies. He had Uncle Buck and Christmas, National Lampoon Vacation or Christmas Vacation, one of those two. But he had like this block of movies, and he also did Home Alone. But these movies from the mid '80s about teens were huge, and they're sort of representative of Gen X.
Iconic.
Yeah, I use that word too much though, so I tried to avoid it. But what I think it was Roger Ebert. I was reading a review that he had written of the movie at the time. He said that what really sets John Hughes movies apart is the teens he writes are believable to teens, to those of us who were teens at the time. At the time, we said, "This is us."
Right.
He was good at writing that authentic teen character. Most movies that featured teens either were like totally unbelievable or were super nostalgic, and they were like teens from the 50s. Like they're teens from the age of the people who are writing the movies.
Right, as opposed to the people who are actually teens at the time the movie came out.
Exactly. So, I
would say that's true from my experience. I'm not that I've watched all of his movies, but the ones I did watch when I was a teen did have that sort of, they clicked. They felt like this is who we are, that sort of feel.
Right. Yeah. And Breakfast Club, now looking back, it's a little bit as a now 50 plus year old parent, I'm a little horrified. And there were aspects of the way they talked, and there's a lot of it's inevitable that we become our parents. When you get older, your heart dies, and I'm like, oh yeah, give me a break. But some kids really thought this sort of stuff. I mean, some of the portrayal is a little over the top. They kind of go over the top in order to really make the point, I suppose. But there is a lot of us versus them. It's us versus the adults, where the adults put us in these categories. You're a jock, you're a nerd, and
I feel like that those categories weren't created by adults. Those categories were created by teens.
A little bit, but the expectations, like the jock was created by his dad, and I've seen that. Kids whose dads were jocks and want their son to be a jock too, and this is what it means to be a jock, to be an athlete. And the rich girl who her parents buy her everything so that she will be the most popular girl in school. I mean, there is some of that. Parents living vicariously through their children. I
suppose my experience of high school was that for the most part, people.
Well, you were an outsider.
I suppose.
Right? I mean, I was one of the nerds. I was not, a jock or whatever. I wasn't a stoner, but I was friends with them.
I spent a lot of time hanging out with the band kids and the drama kids, but I was neither a band kid nor a drama kid.
Yeah, that makes you the outsider weirdo.
Probably.
Well, I mean, and the funny thing is, as I say in the podcast, I was friends with with some jocks and with some outsiders and weirdos and stoners. But a lot of stoners is the wrong term, but sort of the grunge kids. And I mean, some of them were stoners, but I was friends with a lot of these kids because we were all in CYO together. CYO is like old Northeast term for youth group. It's Catholic Youth Organization. That's what it used to be.
Yeah, we did not have.
No, you wouldn't have.
CYOs.
But we were in youth organization at our parish together, and that's how we knew each other. So we kind of knew each other outside of school, which is, I think, a big difference. They kind of crossed the barriers. I don't think we would have been friends in school necessarily. Although, also, my school was a little weird because we were a very academic-oriented school, and a lot of the jocks were also academic nerds. Like, not nerds, academically advanced, which just seemed doubly unfair.
Yeah, my school was not a magnet school, but I think they became a magnet school like sometime after I was there. It was very much a school for like where there was a sort of separate, not exactly gifted program, but it would probably have been called a gifted program at a different time.
Yeah, we had honors, and then what was this? There was something above honors, so it was
AP.
honors. I guess it was AP. We had a lot of kids in honors and AP.
I was pretty much honors and AP straight through.
This is a surprise.
Yeah, and but I remember like my Latin teacher. I took Latin for 4 years in high school because I was that kind of geek.
Yes.
But she had a real soft spot for like the football players, and it seemed like there were a lot of football players who ended up taking Latin because it's not like she like gave them breaks or like, you know, went easy on them, but she knew how to teach to them,
right,
to their strengths and make Latin interesting to them. I don't know. She had a real gift for just teaching. So that was kind of fun. Like,
that's cool.
Half of my Latin class were like the football players who needed to fulfill their language requirements.
And Latin was easier to get through than the other languages.
Right. And I think maybe it also fit with like their schedules or something. Like, I don't know. It just
Coach said to take Latin.
Probably. It was kind of funny.
So for you this week, you've been on a real Star Wars book experience.
Yeah, I figured after I finished my heady Russian novel,
it's time for something light.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching Star Wars Rebels, and I kind of wanted to find more about some of the like the backstory of those.
You've never
characters.
Been more attractive to me than you are now.
I have to say, I've never read a Star Wars novel before in my life. I had no interest in reading novelizations of the movies, and I had no interest in like the characters sort of outside of the screen. Like I was happy with watching the movies, and that was that. But watching Rebels sort of got me out of the movie framework, I guess.
Yeah, because it's an animated TV show. Yeah.
So I read Star Wars: A New Dawn, which is the backstory for Hera Syndulla and Kanan Jarrus.
The main characters from
two of the main characters
from Rebels.
Right, because Rebels is sort of an ensemble. But anyway, this goes back to how they met. It's a how they met story, and how they sort of got on the path to rebellion.
Right.
And it was fun. It was a fun ride.
And the nice thing is you're reading this, and then the kids are reading these too.
Right. The Bella and Sophie had already read this one.
I've read all these books already.
Right.
Yeah.
Bella and Sophie had already read them, and when I started reading it, I also put it on Anthony's Kindle, and then I found the audiobook for Ben. And so they've been reading along too.
That's awesome.
It's kind of fun. Like it's a book club, essentially, a Star Wars book club. And then when I finished that, I went on to start reading the Thrawn books.
So Thrawn is a character that was created...
He was created for the Clone Wars?
No. So he was created by Timothy Zahn back in the 90s. In the dark period between Return of the Jedi and the prequels, when there was no Star Wars and not even any Star Wars on the horizon. All we had were these new novels that took place after the end of Return of the Jedi. And what happened, after the Empire fell and the New Republic was formed, what happened to Luke and Leia and Han, and Leia and Han got married, and
right. Those were that was where I was totally disinterested in reading any of that.
Right, and I
feel validated now that that's like all not canon because I don't have it in my head.
Right, that's what I was going to say. So there was this character, Grand Admiral Thrawn, that was created for those books, and people loved this character. He was this amazing antagonist. I don't want to say villain per se because you liked him. He was so cool. He was so competent as opposed to all those other stupid Imperial admirals and generals. And but when Disney bought Star Wars off of Lucasfilm, or bought Lucasfilm back in the early 2000 teens, they said everything that happened between Return of the Jedi, everything that's been done between Return of the Jedi and what we do now, including Clone Wars was still airing, so that counted, but everything else is not canon anymore. It's not considered part of the Star Wars story. Star Wars is very keen on, they control everything. They make sure everything fits, that every book every comic book, every TV show, every movie, all is consistent. So all that stuff was not canon anymore, but they've been bringing parts of that stuff back in, including Thrawn,
so
who showed up in Rebels.
Right. So they've sort of taken the character and they have created a new story for him that's kind of the same but different.
Yeah. So he's still the same same personality. He does the same. He studies the art of culture in order to understand how to defeat them militarily, how to understand how they think. So that's all the same, but the backstory has been changed. Like, so what happened to him before and after the Empire fell and before the Empire fell, all that's changed. But his backstory had never really been told. So this is all new.
So this is new backstory.
Right.
So I have to say, I've only encountered him in Star Wars Rebels.
Yes.
As an antagonist. And he's not a huge figure. I don't think he comes in until like the third and fourth season.
Yeah.
And he's definitely a kind of a scary antagonist. And I liked him, but I was curious. So I picked up the first Thrawn book. And I really, really liked the way it was told. It was a good...
Zahn is a really good author.
Yeah.
This is not just a throwaway. Like, these could stand alone. If you, like, just change the setting, these could stand alone on their own as really good science fiction books.
Right. A science fiction with, if you even just cut out the whole Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
So there's this sort of frame story where it's kind of told in, like, diary form, switching points of view from different characters, and
the first book starts with telling how
Thrawn comes to the Empire to begin with, which was really interesting because, like, when you meet him in Rebels, he's already Grand Admiral Thrawn, and
but less than 20 years previously,
he's
a weird alien prisoner.
Right, he's weird aliens they find stranded on a planet, and yeah, he's got a really interesting, like, it just sort of shows his rise through the Imperial Navy, and
the Emperor sees something in him.
But it's not clear, like, to what extent he is in sympathy with the Emperor and to what extent he's manipulating and using the Emperor while the Emperor is attempting to manipulate and use him, which I found really sort of satisfying, like trying to unpeel... to discern the layers, like,
where does Thrawn's loyalties lie?
Right.
Is he some kind of secret agent for his own people that he comes from?
Right. There's a lot of questions about, like, divided loyalties, and I mean, especially, like, the interesting thing is, and I was talking about this with Sophia too, was that as you've developed this liking for Thrawn and this sympathy for him, then you have to kind of pull back when he encounters the rebels, and you're like, wait, now I'm kind of feeling like I'm cheering for the Empire. I really want to be cheering for the rebels. So this is kind of difficult to feel like my own loyalties as a reader are being divided in the same way that the characters' loyalties are being divided. It's really clever way of putting you, the reader, into the position of having that divided loyalty.
Which goes to show how could people, be so evil? Well, but they don't see themselves as evil.
It's one of my favorite themes in literature, really, is how do people get to the point of, sympathizing with bad causes? And how do we then learn how to sympathize with those who are in sympathy with bad causes? Like,
right. How do we help to rehabilitate those people? How do we help them to overcome?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the first step really to rehabilitation is that somebody has to see them, empathize with them, sympathize with them, be able to put themselves in their shoes and see what they value and understand it as, because people always value something that's good.
Or at least they see as good.
Or that they perceive to be good. And usually there is a kernel of good there that's been twisted.
Right.
And so perceiving the good that they
aspire to.
What is the good that they see? Because nobody thinks of themselves as the villain. Nobody thinks of themselves as evil.
Right.
And you have to be able to...
Except for maybe the Emperor. I'm just kidding.
It's really hard to find any saving grace in Palpatine. He seems
thoroughly to be the devil.
Yeah. That might be, in fact, a flaw in his character, because I don't know that anyone is really 100% evil.
There was a really good discussion in Secrets of Star Wars. They did an episode on Palpatine last week, or last episode, and it's a really good discussion of that and why maybe it is good that he is the one character that is thoroughly through and through evil, because it creates this contrast.
I suppose. I mean, it does create, Darth Vader is bad, but he's not Palpatine bad.
Right. Well, there's a kernel of good. There's good in him. I feel it.
And maybe in a universe where you don't really have religion.
Yes.
There is no Christianity. There's no
devil.
Right. There's no God. There's no devil within the framework of the stories that they're telling. Now, there might be characters who have religion, but that's not really portrayed within the series. And so maybe to have a character who is pure evil, it becomes your benchmark.
Right. He becomes your Lucifer and Milton, I mean, he becomes that evil character, the ultimate evil.
Right. Because,
which then changes how you look at Rise of Skywalker and his return. Spoilers. You see him at the beginning, so it's not a big deal. So there's the first Thrawn book, which follows Thrawn's arrival in the Empire and his rise to the heights. Then there's Thrawn Alliances, which is really interesting because it's
Thrawn Alliances. I really liked. Like I said, I read a bunch of these. So I finished Thrawn. Alliances, and now I'm reading Thrawn
Traitor.
Is it Traitor or Treachery? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, one of those.
Anyway, something
I'll
about
link
treachery.
it in the show notes.
Alliances is great because Thrawn teams up with Darth Vader. The Emperor sends him on a mission with Darth Vader. But it turns out that Thrawn's first contact with
the
Empire, which at the time was during the Clone Wars.
With the Republic.
Was with the Republic during the Clone Wars, when he teamed up with Anakin Skywalker. They ran into each other and they teamed up. They had their similar goals. Their missions kind of coincided and overlapped. And so they teamed up then. And so it was Anakin who actually sort of taught Thrawn about the Republic, about the Clone Wars, and sort of set him on this journey where he ends up in the Empire. And so now you've got these two parallel stories. You cut back and forth throughout the novel between Thrawn's adventure with Anakin and Thrawn's adventure with Darth Vader, who, of course, are the same people, but does Thrawn know that or not? Can he figure it out? Will he recognize Vader as Anakin? It's kind of a fun question.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's another story about divided loyalties, about conflicted points of view, Anakin being sympathetic but flawed.
Right.
Vader also, I feel like there's an interesting hint that his time spent with Thrawn keeps pulling him back to his memories of being Anakin, who he calls the Jedi. And I have to wonder if that doesn't set the scene for Luke being able to draw Anakin out of Vader. Like, does Thrawn plant the seed which leads to Vader's redemption by recalling to him his past as Anakin? I mean, I really have to wonder if there's not a little hint that Thrawn is part of Vader's redemptive arc, which is really fascinating.
Yes. Well, so that's the Thrawn Alliances. Then there's Thrawn Treason.
Treason, that's what it was.
Which is about it takes place right up to just before the events of A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie. And so this is he gets pulled between his loyalty to his people, which he's from a planet,
an alien species called the Chiss.
The Chiss, and they have the Chiss ascendancy. That's their empire. And so between his allegiance to them and his allegiance to the Empire, and pulled between them, and I forget all of the machinations involved.
See, when Thrawn first comes to the Empire, he's assigned an interpreter and aide because he doesn't speak the standard basic very well. And that aide becomes like sort of gets stuck to him for his entire career.
He ends up becoming his aide de camp.
Right. With all sorts of conflicted loyalties there too. Major theme throughout the series.
Right.
And at some point this aide ends up going over to the Chiss and being a traitor. So the layers of possible treason, like is Thrawn committing treason? Is his former aide committing treason? Who's committing treason here?
I think Thrawn sends him, or
there's a suggestion that he's been sent, and maybe with the Emperor's knowledge and consent, maybe not. It's not 100% clear.
Right. So so that's the first trilogy. There's actually a second trilogy that's begun. And so that's what I was remembering. And the next book, this is the fourth book, called Ascendancy, which goes all the way back to Thrawn's origins in his people and where he comes from there, and it was going to follow him through. And that's interesting because there's almost nothing we recognize from Star Wars in that,
except this character
There is a moment where, actually, when he encounters Anakin, it shows that like right up to that point. And then the stuff from that first novel, that other novel, occurs, and then we jump over that.
Okay.
But it's just really good. So there's a trilogy on that. And the reason this is important is if you're a fan of The Mandalorian, you know that in the episode that featured Ahsoka Tano, she was looking for Thrawn. And there's a reason that she's looking for Thrawn, which would be spoilers, so I won't say.
I don't want to know. I mean, I'm assuming that by the time
you know because you saw Rebels.
I assume that there's some clues there, but I'm assuming that there's more that will come out.
There's not more that I know. I mean, I only know what you know from watching Star Wars Rebels.
I'm wondering, though, if the books are going to lay more. Anyway, so The Mandalorian strongly suggests that Thrawn is going to show up in the new series.
In fact, from what I'm hearing, it's almost certain in the Ahsoka series.
Maybe in the Ahsoka series, if not in the Mandalorian series.
I think in the Ahsoka series. And in fact, is it Mads Mikkelsen or his brother? There's the two brothers who are actors, the Mikkelsens, and one of them voices Thrawn for the animated series and does a really good job of it. And there's talk of that he's actually going to do the live action version, which would be really cool because he's really good. He has the look, just needs to be blue. So anyway. That
can be achieved with makeup.
Yes, that definitely. So
blue skin and red eyes. He's very creepy looking.
Yes, and the eyes glow. That's actually
glowing red eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
that. Talk about going, hitting something very deep in the lizard brain of human beings.
Right.
So yeah, glowing red eyes. So it was so good books, right?
Yeah, fun books. A nice change of pace. Like I enjoy around looking at my memories through my blog. At about this time of year, I usually enjoy having a fun, fast-paced series that I can just blow through a whole bunch of books in a row. Boom, 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 boom. I guess it gives me a feeling of like countering that winter slog feeling to just really get lost in a world that's fun, fast-paced adventure, and not too much deep thinking.
And then when spring hits, you start and Easter starts rolling around.
Well, usually I pick up something a little bit more weighty during Lent.
Yep.
I mean,
and so you get into deeper subjects, and summer comes around. It's beach or vacation reading time.
Yeah.
So seasons of reading. Yeah, I get it.
It's kind of fun to have a record so that I can kind of track these things because my memory is terrible and I do not remember these things.
Which is why I do Goodreads, but I know you don't do Goodreads.
I kind of tried to start doing Goodreads, but again, I'm not very good at remembering to put things on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really works best if you're all Kindle, whereas you're not. You read a lot of paper books, which is fine. Luddite. So we should move on and finish off talking about. Well, let's talk about today's mass readings. So this was the fourth Sunday in Ordinary Time, and I have to say I did not find Father's homily all that memorable. I think you remember a little bit more than I did. But the first reading was from Deuteronomy, which was, God will raise up a prophet from among you. And so that goes along with the gospel, which is Jesus in the synagogue teaching, and then the guy saying, "I know you. You're Jesus of Nazareth. You've come to destroy us, and you're the Holy One of God." And Jesus rebukes the unclean spirit within him and tells him to come out. And everyone's like, "What is this? A new teaching with authority." So, any thoughts about this? Did anything strike you on this one? It feels so very straightforward, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, I thought Father made a really interesting point where he says, when we think about like God promising Moses that he will raise up a new prophet, that is a perpetual promise, a prophet who will speak in my name, which is something that we actually fulfill within our baptismal promises. We fulfill that role of prophet. And so that he says, when we want to hear what God is saying, what God is prophesying, what he's calling us to, we can look around us and listen to, like, there are people here next to you in the pew in church, Pope Francis, priests and bishops. There are prophetic voices, right, speaking to us. And what is God calling us to pay attention to?
It's also a bit of a warning in that first reading, which is, I will put my words into his mouth, into the prophet's mouth. But if he presumes to speak in my name, an oracle that I've not commanded him to speak, or speaks in the name of other gods, he shall die. That's a stern warning right there.
Right, which I
should tremble.
Which I think also goes really well with what Father was saying, which is we have a prophetic role, but we can't put words into God's mouth and pretend that what we think the mission of the church should be, like our agenda isn't necessarily God's agenda.
Right.
So that prophecy is a gift from God. It's not something we impose on him.
Right.
Or we speak prophetically at our peril.
I kind of want to mention the reading from 1 Corinthians too, because it is actually kind of amusing. It's the Paul is advising how married and unmarried men and unmarried and married women should behave.
Married women and married men are concerned about things of this world, whereas the unmarried are able to spend more of their attention and energy being concerned about things of God.
Right. A married man is anxious about the things of the world, how he may please his wife, and he is divided. And so it's an interesting, I mean, this is this is one of the bases for celibacy among the clergy and religious, that, an unmarried man, a priest, a brother, a sister, they can give themselves wholeheartedly into the mission. And in fact, as we've seen, they go into sure martyrdom, certain death for the sake of the gospel, freely, because they don't have to worry about their obligation to their spouse, to their children. I mean, if I were a married priest, I'd have to think twice, or a deacon, I'd have to think twice about my obligations to you and the kids before putting myself into a situation that could result in death, for the gospel, martyrdom.
But I was also thinking about, like, we got a newsletter this week from Mother Olga of the Sacred Heart, who founded a new religious order in Boston at the
Daughters of Mary of Nazareth.
Right, at the request of Cardinal Sean. So the Daughters of Mary of Nazareth take as their spirituality that of Blessed Charles de Foucauld, who was a French monk who he had this conversion experience, and then he went on pilgrimage to Jerusalem and lived there for a while as like the doorkeeper and servant to this monastery of Poor Clares. And eventually he felt like he was being called to live the spirituality of Nazareth, to be little and hidden. And so Mother Olga really talks about how, like, for the sisters in their community, being 100% dedicated to God, giving their entire life to him, having no possessions, no family, means that they can be 100% present to those in the community who need them. So, for example, during the lockdowns, the sisters were able to make sure that the church was open every day. They called all the people who were at home in the parish, and they arranged for things like there was a father who was dying of cancer whose son had not yet been baptized. And so they arranged for a priest to come to his house and give the father anointing of the sick and hear his confession and give him communion and also baptize his son. And he died like 48 hours after his son was baptized. And that kind of accompaniment, like,
they are free to be able to do this. They're free
to go out into the community to see what's needed and to really accompany people and give them everything that they have.
To be anxious about the things of the Lord.
Which, I don't have the time to do that. I've got my own family to take care of and to
frankly,
feed. And
you got to be careful about bringing diseases back to your kids and, or getting sick yourself and not being able to take care of your kids. Yes, exactly. So, yeah. And this is probably the connection to God raising up prophets. These are the prophets that God raises up among us today too, right? He raises up priests and religious and brothers to go out and proclaim the Lord in these ways.
Right.
Yeah. So, good reading. And yeah, I'm glad we actually talked about this now, because I think I might have got more out of this discussion than I did out of the homily. Sorry, Father, but just I wasn't in the right space to receive your homily today. So let's wrap it up there. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Christopher K., Rodney C., Ann W., Samuel L., and Catherine N. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. Now's a great time to become a supporter of StarQuest, thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest patron. When you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give, the first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. So if you became a new patron, say $10 a month, after 3 months, our donor would give $30 to StarQuest to support all our shows, including this one, making your gift go even further. So if you've been thinking of becoming a StarQuest patron, now's the time. Visit sqpn.com/give today. So that's it from us. If you have any feedback you'd like to share with us, let us know by commenting at sqpn.com/bets, that's BETTS, or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to bets@sqpn.com. And I'll have links to all those books that we talked about and the various other things from our discussion in our show notes at sqpn.com. Until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.